Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Obsessive Compulsive Gaming. I am the Obsessive Compulsive Gamer, and this is my review for CRONOS, The New Dawn. So dear viewers, this particular video game released just yesterday, and just like that beautiful bearded bastard Barry Bertrum, you're probably wondering,
what is this?
Now let's get one thing out of the way right away, ladies and gentlemen. I've seen quite a lot of people online calling this game Dead Space 4, and that is a complete and blatant lie. This is called CRONOS, The New Dawn. I mean, come on, duh. Obviously it's not Dead Space 4. What it is, though, is a third-person action psychological horror video game thingamajig. Now, in this bloody video game, we play as the Traveler, who works as an agent for an enigmatic organization known as the Collective. As the Traveler, you must survive the dangers of a future apocalyptic wasteland to find points that will allow you to travel back in time in order to extract selected people who did not survive the change. And no, this particular change has absolutely nothing to do with the menopause. Instead, this particular change was a cataclysmic event that turned humans into monsters known as orphans. And you might be wondering, why are these human beings who've turned into monsters called orphans? Well, the game doesn't explicitly say this, but I think it's very obvious that because they have now turned into a monster, they have massacred their entire family. I mean, come on, duh. So let's review this horror video game the only way I know how, badly. And let's start with what I absolutely love about CRONOS, The New Dawn. As a massive fan of survival horror video games like Resident Evil, Silent Hill 2, and in fact, the talented bastards who made this game were responsible for the recent Silent Hill 2 remake. What a coincidence, eh? And this being yet another survival horror video game in a third-person perspective, that means we get to explore locations, solve incredibly simple environmental puzzles, and of course, do battle with evil creatures. And the evil creatures in this particular video game look like something out of John Carpenter's The Thing. And yes, I know a lot of people are comparing the creatures in this to the creatures in Dead Space, but I'm going to try to avoid that comparison if I can. So let's just say that the creatures you take on in this game are all forms and shapes and sizes, and all of them are absolute nightmare. Luckily though, you have your handy firearm, which can conveniently turn into other types of firearm. To do that, you'll have to find said attachments in the environment, or behind locked doors, or in secret areas, and all that hullabaloo. But to make it incredibly simple, you will essentially have access to a pistol, to an assault rifle, to a shotgun, and, if you happen to find it, to a kind of grenade launcher type thingamajig. And for the most part, these particular weapon attachments will allow you to get through all of the game's combat encounters. You might not get through these encounters easily, but that's a discussion for another point in this video. What I also loved about this game was the 1980s aesthetics that you'll find in certain sequences, most notably when our character, quote-unquote, goes back in time. The soundtrack is very reminiscent of something like Stranger Things. Apparently, a lot of the locations in this game are based on an actual place in Poland. I personally have never been to Poland, I've been to Poundland though, which kind of sounds like Poland, but it isn't Poland, obviously. I mean, duh. And to go with the fantastic soundtrack, we also, rather unsurprisingly, have fantastic visuals. After all, these are the talented bastards who made the most recent Silent Hill 2 remake. Did I already tell you that? Oh, I did. Moving on then. I also particularly enjoyed this game's story, particularly in some of the twists and turns that it takes in the latter half of the game. While I didn't understand absolutely everything in the game, luckily I went through a New Game Plus playthrough, which not only gave me the true ending, but also allowed me to understand a lot more about the story and the characters. Oh yes, I mentioned true ending. This game has 3. That's right, 3. Not 4, 3 different endings. And how you unlock those endings, well, you're just going to have to discover that for yourselves, aren't you? I can't be expected to do everything. What the hell do you think I am? The do everything man? This is a fantastic survival horror video game. But is there anything about the game I didn't enjoy so much? Well, as I alluded earlier, while you are equipped with weaponry, I did find that the game had a distinct lack of ammunition for said weaponry. And while that would lead to particularly tense sequences where I'd be running away from enemies, not sure if I'd have enough ammo to finish the boss encounter or whatever. In fact, there was one particular instance where I did in fact run out of ammunition, so I had to resort to essentially beating the bloody monstrous thing to death, which thankfully I was successful at. The point I'm making here is this game is a particularly tricky one. Deliberately so, I feel. I just wish there was more ammo readily available, or maybe there were some difficulty options or some accessibility options that would negate all this running out of ammo, never having enough ammo, the game gang-banging you with monsters every bloody 5 minutes. It did lead to a couple of moments of frustration, particularly in some of the boss fights, which I had to retry more times than I would care to admit. But this is a very, very slight little niggle in what is otherwise a fantastic survival horror experience, with splendid visuals, splendid sound design, and above all, a very interesting story that kept me gripped from beginning to end. Therefore, I declare that CRONOS The New Dawn is splendid. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, my review for CRONOS The New Dawn. If you enjoyed this little review of mine, don't forget to give me a thumbs up. If you haven't enjoyed it, well then feel free to give me a thumbs down. But please remember the single most important thing I always tell you, dear viewer, and that is to always stay obsessed with gaming. Are you still here? Oh, you must have really enjoyed this video then. In that case, you had better subscribe to the channel and check out our other content. Otherwise, you're a booby pants, and no one wants to be a booby pants.